Savage left WWE in 1994 because he was tired of being relegated to the commentary desk and felt like he still had a lot left in the tank as far as his in-ring career went. Enjoying a second act in WCW, Savage was a top star for the promotion, and though he never had a match quite like the ones he'd had against Ricky Steamboat, Ultimate Warrior and Jake Roberts while plying his trade on Vince McMahon's canvas, he did have many very, very good ones. Snap into them with me because I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 best Randy Savage WCW matches. Ooh yeah! Number 10 versus Bret Hart at SLAMBOREE 1998. The Hitman hadn't been in WCW long, so his soul was still intact, and enjoyed working with the Macho Man, so this was a spirited affair. The two had wrestled a couple of times previously in WWE, but never in the semi-main event of a pay-per-view, and this felt like a big-time clash of strong personalities, helped by Roddy Piper being enlisted as special guest ref. Bret and Randy were both older and more worn down than they had been when they met in years prior, and this relied more on brawling and theatrics than technical nous and finesse. Hart controlled Savage by working the knee methodically, dictating the pace, while Macho Man, who was at this stage in the NWO Wolfpack and feuding with Hogan's Black and White crew, valiantly battled through the pain and made intermittent comebacks. In the end, it all, sadly and rather predictably, degenerated into the typical shenanigans that plagued WCW main events of the era, with Miss Elizabeth and Hogan getting involved, Bret decking Piper in the back of the head with brass knuckles, and a weird DQ finish. But even at half speed, Randy Savage versus Bret Hart is something to savor. Number 9 versus Lex Luger on Nitro. On the December 4th, 1995 edition of Nitro, Savage defended his WCW World Heavyweight title against Lex Luger, the winner to meet Sting and Ric Flair in a triple threat match at Starrcade. The total package was right in the middle of things at this point, acting the heel but still aligned with real-life best friend Sting in an interesting dynamic for the time. The rejuvenated Macho Man, on the other hand, was the champ and having a stellar run of matches that proved WWE may have been short-sighted in putting him out to pasture when they did. This was another good one, as they got plenty of time and were able to tell their story, which mainly revolved around Savage working over Luger's shoulder, which Lex sold well. It eventually spilled to the outside, and as both men were tiring, the ref was bumped, meaning that Randy couldn't get the victory following his flying elbow. Cue Ric Flair, then Hulk Hogan, and then a disappointing disqualification. It was an ending you could see coming a mile away, but it and the post-match certainly worked for the storyline and helped add more tension to the simmering situation with Savage, Hogan, Luger, and Sting. Number 8 versus Ric Flair at SUPERBRAWL 1996. Always a winning combination, Randy Savage and Ric Flair met many times in WCW, and the results were never less than enjoyable. When the two squared off at 1996's SUPERBRAWL, Macho was defending his WCW World Heavyweight title inside a steel cage. Flair had Woman in his corner, while Savage had Miss Elizabeth in his. The Nature Boy began proceedings by hitting on Liz and trying to goad Savage, and then, just a couple of minutes into the match, took advantage of the no DQ rules by decking the referee for no apparent reason. This was much more of a fight than most of their other matches from this era, as they took full advantage of their enclosure and the personal nature of the rivalry. Flair dominated, wearing Savage down before Randy made his comeback and busted his opponent open. Flair bleeding in a steel cage match? I'm as shocked as you are. I'm also shocked by Slick Rick getting his backside out before being crotched on the top rope. It may be a blood feud for a major title, but that doesn't mean we can't have some arse comedy, right? After some quality scrapping and mooning, Liz shockingly betrayed her man and handed Flair a shoe, which he used to become a 13-time world champion. Number 7 versus Sting at Spring Stampede 1998. The Macho Man met WCW World Heavyweight Champion Sting in the main event of 1998's Spring Stampede, as he looked to wrest the gold back into the camp of the New World Order. This no disqualification match was the first significant meeting between the two icons, and given the stakes, situation, and where both men were in their careers, it was never going to be the out-and-out classic that it could have been years earlier. Rather, this was a big meandering brawl, but a good one that was carried by the star power of both men. It was a back-and-forth encounter until Randy resorted to dirty tactics, but couldn't get the job done, and eventually bumped referee Charles Robinson. From there, Liz got involved, a chair came into play, Hogan stuck his leather handbag of a face in the mix, and at the end of it all, it looked like the man in the face paint might walk away from it all with the title still in in his possession after hitting a Scorpion Death Drop. It was not to be though, Kevin Nash and his jackknife powerbomb intervening and ensuring that Savage walked away with the belt. Number 6 versus the Giant on Nitro. Savage's ability to work with anyone, regardless of style, gimmick, or size, came in handy when the Macho Man clashed with the Giant in the WCW World Title main event of the December 18th, 1995 Nitro. Paul White was so much bigger and also sorely lacking in experience here, learning on the job as he went along. He'd been put straight into the title picture because of his size and luckily had a trusty ring general in Savage to show him the ropes. They kept things simple, with every move and mannerism serving a purpose and helping to tell their story. The Giant dominated with power moves and looked to have Savage beaten, but took a risk with a very athletic top rope splash, and there was no water in the pool, so to speak. Randy hit the big elbow, but the 7-footer emphatically kicked out, a real rarity, and hit a huge dropkick. In a novel spot, Giant went to hit a suplex on the exposed floor, but Savage got caught up in the ropes and evaded it, the big man taking the brunt on his back. The chokeslam should have won it, but guess who decided to make his presence felt? I'll give you a clue, it rhymes with Bulk Logan. Number 5 versus Diamond Dallas Page at Halloween Havoc 1997. The high point of Randy Savage's WCW run was undoubtedly his program with Diamond Dallas Page. In DDP, Savage found a kindred spirit who likewise enjoyed mapping his matches out well in advance, right down to the tiniest details, as Savage had done for years. Putting the two together meant that, at the very least, they would be on the same page and know exactly where they were going out there. Where they were going at Halloween Havoc 97 was a Las Vegas sudden death match, which was billed as the co-main event. There was no warming up here as they immediately started brawling on the floor, the intensity level rarely dropping for the duration of the contest. The action spilled into the crowd, then onto the stage where the two men did their best to wreck the spooky set, though neither could get their opponent down for a 10 count before the stairs and a television camera came into play. Liz and Kimberly got involved, DDP hit some sort of rudimentary version of a Styles Clash, but missed a diamond cutter. He survived the ensuing flying elbows and hit the cutter proper, but the ref was down and an obviously fake Sting, it was Hogan behind the mask, came out and hit Dallas with his bat, finally putting him down for 10. Number 4 versus Ric Flair on Nitro. Outside of his series with DDP, the best thing that Randy Savage probably did in WCW were his plethora of matches against old nemesis Ric Flair. The two clashed many times in singles, tags, and multi-man affairs on both pay-per-view and many times free TV. Lucky Monday Night War viewers, because when both were motivated, they could offer up a match on Nitro that was often the best thing on the entire show that week. Such was the case on the June 17th, 1996 episode of Nitro, when the two had a wild and manic brawl. Savage was ultra intense here, like even more than usual, if you can imagine that, and he beat Flair from pillar to poster catering table before drenching him in champagne in the frenetic early period. He missed the big dive to the floor and hit the rail though, giving the dirtiest player in the game a reprieve and a chance to work him over. Again and again, Savage showed real fire and made his comebacks aggressively, while Flair gleefully bumped and flew around for him. But then, the ref was knocked down. Savage hit a couple of big flying elbows and disposed of an interfering Chris Benoit, but ultimately fell to the Horseman numbers game and Mongo's deadly Halliburton case. Number 3, with Sting and Lex Luger versus the Outsiders and question mark at Bash at the Beach 1996. Understandably overshadowed by the big reveal at the finish, the main event of 1996's Bash at the Beach is still a grand match before Hulk Hogan saunters out and does the unthinkable. The WCW trio of Savage, Luger, and Sting were attempting to get rid of the supposedly invading Outsiders, who decided to start the match at a numerical disadvantage with the promise of a mysterious third man showing up at any moment. Luckily for Hall and Nash, Luger got taken out early when a Stinger splash went awry, evening the odds. This was also a clever piece of storytelling, as there was always the possibility that the total package was faking it and that he was in fact the third man. Now down to a standard tag match, the dynamic worked much better and Macho Man was the glue holding it all together, whether he was selling a beating or waiting on the apron for a hot tag. The tension built and the heat grew until Randy came in and cleaned house before a low blow put him down and Hogan came down to complete the business-changing turn. And it made sense that Savage was the one that Hogan dropped the leg on, given their history. Number 2 versus Ric Flair at the Great American Bash 1995. A quite poor 1995 Great American Bash needed to be saved by Randy Savage and Ric Flair, who clashed in the headliner. It had been a really weak show up until that point, points with few highlights. Luckily, Macho Man and the Nature Boy had their working boots on and did their best to salvage the situation, despite their match not being for a title or really having a strong storyline going into it. The only added flourish was Savage being accompanied by his dad, former wrestler and promoter Angelo Poffo, because the event coincided with Father's Day. Well, these two stalwarts don't need much reason to put on a clinic, and the combination of their styles is one that never gets old. They took the fans who were so hot for the match and giving favourable reactions to both guys on quite a ride. The work is good, as you would expect, with both guys doing their shtick, but the ending is odd, as Angelo's cane is stolen by Flair, who uses it to clobber Savage for the pin. And then there's nothing. No wild post-match brawl or angle. The match and show just kind of end. Alright then. Number 1 versus Diamond Dallas Page at the Great American Bash 1997. 2 years after the Flair match, and Savage was main eventing the Bash once again, though this time he was a villain and doing so against his dogged rival Diamond Dallas Page. DDP had scored an upset over Macho Man at the prior month's Spring Stampede, and Savage was out for revenge in this Falls Count Anywhere scrap. As usual, the two men went full tilt from the off, with Page jumping the rail and surprising Savage before the bell rang. He didn't hit the diamond cutter, but did nail a big plancha and a series of clotheslines, including a huge one off the top. Savage gains some control, but invariably it breaks down into a big old-fashioned brawl as they hit each other with everything they can get their hands on and destroy the set as they were partial to doing. From there, it is just pure chaos, or madness since Savage is involved, as referees get pile-driven and Scott Hall does a run-in, hitting the outsider's edge to give Randy the opportunity to hit the flying elbow, concussing Page in the process, but get his win back. Another strong addition to their sterling series, Savage and Dallas did themselves proud when the spotlight was on them.